Hello everybody, this is Sean from Diamond Hearts Art Studio. Today I am resining paintings that are completed by some of our students and ourselves, and I wanted to show you the process that goes into that. So what I have here is a bucket of mixed resin. This is about 40 ounces, so I did 20 ounces of A and 20 ounces of B in a 1-to-1 ratio, and that makes 40 ounces of resin. Now I've got 6 paintings here to cover, so I need approximately 36 ounces. That's about the ratio, that's about the size that I've figured out for an 11 by 14 painting. I should have some resin left. That gives me a chance to make a resin molded item as well using the leftover resin. I just finished mixing that, so a 5-minute mix. There are micro bubbles all throughout, but that's not going to matter because we're pouring it like pancake batter on top of these, and it's going to make such a thin layer that the bubbles will all come out with a little bit of help. But I'll show you the process that we use to cover these paintings. So I have Amazing Clear Cast resin mixed, as I said, about 40 ounces. I've got 6 11 by 14 paintings that are done by students and ourselves. So here's the process. So I take the mixed resin and I pour a circle about 9 inches wide on the painting. Then I take my gloved hand, that's clean gloves, no sparkles or dust or anything, and I move that circle of resin all around the painting, and from this angle I can see how much of it is covered and how much is not yet covered. I can pick the painting up so I can tip it. As long as I drip onto the next painting that I'm going to cover, no resin is lost. So I move my hand all around that painting, covering all of the area, making sure to get the sides as well. You can see and perhaps hear the resin dripping onto the next painting. And I make sure that the entire painting is covered. Making sure to drip the resin off the far corner entirely. So I know that every single square inch of that painting is covered with the resin. Now I can move on to the second painting. I pour a 9-inch circle. And then I can lift it up over the next painting and move the resin to cover the entire thing. Almost like if you were working with cake frosting, this would be a mirror coat. If you're working with resin, you want to make sure that you use gloved hands. You don't ever want to have this stuff on your bare skin. People can develop an allergy to this stuff, so you want to make sure that you are protected, and also making sure that you don't drip on your bare skin. As I mentioned with the first painting, I am making sure all of the corners are covered as well, and making sure that the resin drips off to every corner to make sure that everything is completely covered. When working with the resin, it's important to note you cannot touch anything else. My hands are covered with what is basically glue now. So I want to make sure that while I'm doing this, I'm not doing anything else at the same time. Pour a 9-inch circle. Lift the painting up. Now I can move the resin around on the painting, making sure to cover every square inch. I'm not worried about drips because they're going on to the next painting in the series. Until I get to the last painting, I don't have to worry about losing or wasting any of the resin. That's why it makes sense to wait until you have more than one canvas to cover and do them all at the same time. That way you're using less resin overall because less is dripping onto the mats to catch the resin at the end. Next I have, this painting is an 14 by 14 square. So I'm going to put just a little bit more than that 9-inch circle. Because the canvas is a little bit larger, it takes maybe a little bit more resin to coat the painting. Again, I'm moving that around with my gloved hand to make sure that I cover every single square inch. Now you might notice that the paintings are getting a little bit more contrast on them as the resin is covering them. That is exactly why we started using the resin coat in the first place. It not only protects the paintings, but it turns up the contrast and the amount of detail that you see in the paintings as well. If you use any kind of metallic paint or any kind of sparkle, glitter paint, like the hologram or the dragonfly, that ability to see that is turned way up when using the resin as a top coat. Out of my 6 canvases, I'm now on canvas 5. You see how quickly this goes. And when I drip, I'm dripping onto the new canvas and a couple of drips onto the first canvas that I had done. Because the resin is still so wet, only in the first couple of minutes of it being completely mixed, I still have a lot of work time, so I'm not worried about drips onto the new canvas. I'm making sure that all the edges are coated. I'm making sure that all the corners are caught, because if you leave a corner uncaught, it's going to stand out when the resin is dry and you have one small spot that has no resin on it. That's going to stand out like a sore thumb. The type of resin that we use is Amazing Clear Cast, which we purchase at Michael's. You see, this is just enough to get the last one done. And if I need to do any touch-ups, I have about 1 ounce left in there that's going to fall down the walls from where I poured it, and that will collect at the bottom, and I'll be able to use that if I need to do any touch-ups, if it turns out that I did actually miss a corner or a portion of a painting. I'll still have that ounce left over and not have to mix a whole new batch in order to cover that painting with the amount of resin that we need. We use the Amazing Clear Cast that we get from Michael's because we've tried a number of different resins, and we found that the Amazing Clear Cast has less of a smell, which is important when you're working in a non-ventilated area. We have a very large studio space, so I'm not too worried about that. Amazing Clear Cast also has a capability that we like, in that it does not shrink. So if you were covering these canvases with a casting resin, what you might find is after you complete the coverage, it pulls back from the edges. You get to the edges and it pulls off of the edges, and you end up with scalloped holes on the edges that makes it look like you just splattered it into the middle of the canvas, unconcerned with whether you were getting the edges or not. And even if you get the edges, it still looks unfinished. And that is because those resins shrink when they are curing. And because they take up less room when they're cured than when you pour them on, what you find is that there are areas that the resin pulls away from the canvas. And that is not something that you want to see happen. So make sure you use a resin that is guaranteed to not shrink when curing, and that'll put you in the right place to get your paintings covered. I found a hair in the middle of this one as I was looking at it and making sure it was completely covered, and I was able to pull that hair out with my fingers and put it onto the puppy pea pad underneath that's catching all of the drips of resin. I'm very careful to make sure that I don't miss any spots near the edges. That's what I'm doing here. I'm pouring towards a spot that I see at one of the corners where I didn't cover it with resin appropriately. And I'm making sure that the resin that's on the canvas gets to that section. Now the nice thing about the epoxy resin that we use, the Amazing Clear Cast, and probably every epoxy resin, is that it's self-leveling. We don't have to worry about brushing it on and making sure that we're getting the brush strokes out. We don't have to worry about whether there's an area of the painting that is covered with a bit more resin than another. Because this has a total cure time that's about 12 hours, that gives us plenty of time for any piles of resin on the painting to level out and spread out and fall off the edges, which is exactly what we want to have happen here. All right, so I'm not seeing any more spots that I left uncovered. In order to find those spots, what I'm doing is I'm reflecting the lights above me, and I'm looking at the reflection of the light. And if the reflection of the light has a wave in it over a certain portion of the painting, I know that that portion of the painting isn't completely flat, that there's a problem with the resin there. So I want to make sure that everything is looking pretty flat aside from some micro bubbles. And I'm using the reflections of the lights above me in order to do that. All right, so the next step is I remove my gloves. It doesn't look like I need the extra 1 ounce that I had mixed, so I'm happy with the way that this had come out. I'm going to take off my gloves. I'm going to grab our torch, and I'm going to give each one a fast pass with the torch. You see I didn't get any resin on my hands, but I did get a little bit on one of my wrists. So I'll make sure to get that off. Because the last thing I want to do is develop an allergy to the resin that we use every day. So now I have my creme brulee torch, and I'm going to torch each of these paintings to pop all of the micro bubbles. I'm now going to go over them using the reflections on the light above me to see if I can find any small hairs or dust. And I'm going to remove those with a sharp tool while everything is still very wet. So, sharp tool, this has a needle on the end. I did see a small hair in this one. Let's see if I can find it again. Here it is. Very tiny little hair. But it does stand out when you're looking for them using the reflection of the light above. All right, I don't see any other problems. I'm going to continue to look. And then I'll take you in for a closer look at the reflection so you can see what I'm looking at. All right, so let's look at the paintings in focus so we can see what we're all looking at. You can see that there are some micro bubbles. Here's one. What I'm doing is I'm looking at the reflection of the light above. You can see that there's a micro bubble there that I have to take care of. Otherwise, pretty clean. I can go right to the edges with that reflection and make sure that there's nothing along the edge like a gap that causes a problem with the reflection of the light. What I'm looking for is the best possible circle of the light, and there's some issues that have to get taken care of. So I'm going to grab the torch and try to take care of those. Let's see if I can do that while I'm holding the camera. There. You see those bubbles pop? don't have to get right against the canvas, but I do have to make sure that the heat pops the bubbles. Let's look at the next canvas. There's some bubbles there. So that's what I'm looking for with the reflection of the light. Let's see if we can pop those bubbles there. Okay, I don't want to go too hot and heavy in one particular area, so I need to pick my battles. There we go. Let's see if there's any micro bubbles here too. You can see the way that shine contributes to the amount of reflectivity and also contrast and all of the sparkles coming up from underneath that previously weren't visible in the paintings. That is part of the magic of using the resin as a top coat. There's a couple of bubbles there, I think. Yeah. Some bubbles there. This is the 14 by 14 canvas. See a bubble there. Some bubbles there. I'll take care of those. A little bit of a divot there. I'll check that and see if there's anything I can do there. And that's it. That's how you resin coat multiple paintings at the same time. To our class members, those paintings are going to be able to be picked up tomorrow. It takes 12 to 24 hours for this resin to cure. Oh, there's a lot of spots there. I should take care of that. There we go. These will take 12 to 24 hours to cure, and then they'll be ready for pickup by our students. The next round will be done with alcohol spray rather than using the torch, because at a certain point the torch stops being as effective. And you're more likely to burn the resin coat on the paintings. Thank you for watching, guys. If you want to make something beautiful of your own, come visit us at Diamond Hearts Art Studio right here in downtown Gardner, Massachusetts. We'd love to have you come by. Stay artsy, stay fartsy, and stay tuned for more tips.